You have hit your goal before and you sabotaged it anyway. Not once, probably a few times. And here's the part that should bother you. It wasn't because you got lazy right when things were going well. It happened because a part of your brain saw your own success and treated it like something was wrong. Today I'm going to show you the exact 3-step method to stop sabotaging the life you actually want by identity shifting. But before that, you need to know why the usual advice fails. Why the usual advice fails? You have probably already tried the usual solutions. The usual solution says you need more willpower, more motivation, just be consistent. Fake it until you make it, or always make the right choices. And honestly, none of that is completely wrong. But the problem is, it misses something important. It can make you think if you act like a different person long enough, you'll eventually start believing you have actually become someone who doesn't sabotage his own success. But that's not how your brain works. Your brain always prefers to stick with the identity you built since your childhood. It's built over years from your experiences, your habits, your choices, and the evidence you have collected about yourself. And once a certain model of identity is established, your brain naturally tries to protect it, because your brain prefers familiarity and stays in your comfort zone. That's why simply repeating a few positive affirmations every day won't magically change your life. You can't motivate yourself into becoming an entirely different person overnight. Motivate is a feeling, but your current identity runs much deeper than that. So if you have tried act as if and it didn't work, don't assume you simply weren't trying enough. The truth is, you are probably trying to change your actions fast, without realizing that lasting change starts with your identity. And that's exactly what we are going to look at next. Once you understand how your brain shapes your identity, you'll see self-sabotage from a whole new perspective. So let's take a close look at the core mechanism. The core mechanism. Here's the part almost nobody talks about clearly. Your brain isn't only trying to make you comfortable. One of its biggest jobs is to keep you consistent with who you believe you are. Two psychological ideas explain this. The first is called cognitive consistency. It means your mind doesn't like having two beliefs about yourself that clash with each other. If you have spent years thinking, I'm someone who is easily giving up, but suddenly, when you start acting with a never giving up attitude every day, those two versions of you start to clash. Your brain doesn't like that internal conflict, so it pulls you back toward the identity it already knows, and that can make giving up feel natural. The other is self-verification theory by psychologist William Sower. People often look for proof that their existing beliefs about themselves are right, even when those beliefs are negative. Even when you start changing, your brain may keep pulling you back toward the person you are used to being. So don't think of identity like a light switch on and off. Disciplined or lazy, confident or insecure, it's kind of like a thermostat. The thermostat doesn't think this temperature is good or this temperature is bad. It simply has a target. If the temperature gets too high or too low, it steps in and brings it back to normal. Your identity works the same way. If deep down you believe, I'm the kind of person who starts strong but eventually gives up, then staying consistent with something for a few weeks can start to feel strange or unfamiliar. And slowly, before you even notice, you start slipping back into your old ways. Not because your brain has any bad intention about you, but because it's trying to return you to what feels familiar and comfortable. That's why willpower alone often fails. You can keep doing it for a while through effort and discipline, but until you make better habits feel normal, you'll keep slipping back into your old ways whenever you stop trying so hard. That gap between what you want and what you actually do is what you call self-sabotage. So the real question isn't, how can I try harder? It's, how do I teach my brain to handle things differently instead of repeating the same old patterns? And to change that setting, I'm going to show you 3 steps of identity shifting methods. Let's start with step 1. Step 1. The evidence audit. Suddenly telling yourself, I'm a disciplined person doesn't work, because your brain has months or years of evidence saying otherwise. It's just slowly telling you that's not true, you're lying. Your brain doesn't change because you repeat an affirmation repeatedly. It changes when it starts receiving new evidence. So try this starting today. Start creating evidence and write down 3 things you have done recently that don't match your old identity. They can be tiny, Just make sure they are based on real experiences. For example, you went to gym twice this week even though you always tell yourself, I never stick with anything. That's evidence. You started to acquire a skill in a particular subject and you are still doing it consistently. That's evidence. Earlier you didn't get a project done, but recently you showed up and worked every day for that project when you would normally have skipped it completely. Write down this evidence. This isn't about making yourself feel better. You're giving your brain something much more powerful than an affirmation. And that is proof. You are not saying, I am disciplined. You are showing yourself, look, I already did something disciplined. It's much harder for your brain to deny proof than to deny a statement. And that leads us to step 2. Step 2. Identity gap naming. When our goal is not clear or specified, it's hard to achieve. When you say, I want to be more disciplined, it's too vague. Your brain doesn't know what exactly needs to change. That's why you need to understand what's holding you back and causing you to sabotage your own progress. So first, specify it. For example, you easily give up. So first, write and say to yourself, I want to be someone who actually finishes what they start. But honestly, I have never really thought of myself that way. And here's something worth asking yourself. What kind of person do you want to become? And are your actions actually lining up with that? When you clearly see the gap between who you are now and who you want to become, your brain can't easily ignore it. It's no longer just a feeling. It becomes a problem you actually want to solve. And this is the missing puzzle. When you chose a new identity and when you identify the exact gap between that new identity and the identity your brain currently believes, then the work is almost half done. And that leads to step 3. Step 3, the micro-proof loop. The hard truth is, after you name the gap, you can't close it overnight. Now think back to the thermostat. Whenever there's a sudden big change in temperature, the system quickly steps in to fix it and get things back on track. Your brain can do something similar. Big sudden changes can make your nervous system feel like something's wrong, simply because it's not what you're used to. And that's often when self-sabotage hits the hardest. So instead of trying to change everything at once, use what I call a micro-proof loop. Choose one small thing you can do every day that matches the person you want to become. Don't tell yourself, I'm going to become someone who has six-pack abs. Start with 50 minutes of moderate movement every day, with the mindset of someone who takes care of their body. Or don't say, I'm going to become a world-famous writer. Write just 10 sentences every day as someone who writes. The key is to start small. Because the action is so small, your brain has very little reason to fight it. But when you repeat it every day, you're collecting evidence that supports your new identity. And that's when the loop starts working. Small action creates proof. Proof creates evidence. Evidence changes the way you see yourself. And as your self-image changes, you need less willpower to keep going. Because your new behavior starts to feel normal. That's the real reframe. So your identity isn't some costume you put on. Your brain kind of predicts how things will go. Then spends its time collecting evidence to prove itself right. So in order to work your brain in your favor, use the 3-step reframe method. Here's one action for right now. Before you close this video, write down one piece of evidence from the last 7 days that goes against the old version of you. Actual evidence. One sentence is enough. Write it down in the comment section. And don't forget to watch another very helpful video on the screen. Identity shifting, the cheat code to success.